In just a few short days, it becomes mandatory. Be there or be square. Good afternoon, everybody. Good Thursday afternoon, June 6th, 2024 on the South Side Beat, 4 p.m. Eastern today on DK Pittsburgh Sports, live on YouTube, later where podcasts are found. He is Chris Halicke. I am Crisan. And the OTAs, the voluntary portion of the offseason, has officially come to a close. The Steelers had day 10 out of 10 today, really 9 out of 9 if you take out Mondays.
You cannot discount Kennywood.
I guess not.
That is a day.
So, anyway, point is, it is at 100% completion. How about that? The OTA period is at 100% completion. The voluntary portion, as I mentioned, which means come next week, everybody has to be there. Cam Heyward, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, Russell Wilson, everybody has to be there. And now it's
a problem getting Russell Wilson there.
No, and now it's the final check before we get to Latrobe.
Yep. Mandatory minicamp is up next. That is next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then after that, it's training camp. That's listen, 3 days left of the offseason program in terms of on-field stuff going on. Obviously, these guys can continue to meet. They can continue to have, whatever meetings on the inside, classroom stuff. But 3 more practices. Mike in Texas asks, is it open to the media? Yes, mandatory minicamp is open to the media. Corey and DK, I'm sure will both be on the scene for us. And there was a little note, like, if I can get my house under contract, like in the next couple of days, maybe I can sneak and get up there for mandatory minicamp, but I'm not holding my breath. Activity's gone down a little bit, so we're trying, but anyway, mandatory minicamp, that is, that's all that's left between now and training camp, man. I'm excited. So, obviously it's been an eventful week for sure. We didn't have a show yesterday. DK and Ramon, obviously the Ramon show yesterday was a really good one, by the way. If you didn't see it, Ramon shared a lot of really, really good perspective, obviously having, knowing what's going on with Cam Heyward, having played with Cam Heyward, knows what's going on with Cam Sutton now that the Steelers have actually officially signed him, what he knows about Cam Sutton. It was really good. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, go back and watch it. Ramon, his perspective is definitely worth watching and worth listening to. And so, but it's been an eventful week. I almost feel like today might have been a little lackluster compared to what happened Tuesday and Wednesday. So, what happened today, Corey, as OTAs wrapped up?
Yeah, the final day of OTAs. It's kind of a getaway day. The final days of the weeks of OTAs are always getaway days. But, when you talk about the final day of it all, before the mandatory period starts, players aren't looking to hang around to speak to us. Let's just be frank. They're looking to get out. They're getting into the locker room. They're getting onto the flights. There's some probably in the air as we speak, as we're on the air. They're in the air, heading back to whatever destination they might be going to. Now, some might hang around, get workouts in this weekend. That's fine. But, they did it for Memorial Day weekend. A lot of them left last weekend. And sure enough, today, that's no different. So, as far as what happened, it's football in shorts still. It's not everybody's there. So, I speak of a few people who were there, obviously. One person that's been there over the last couple of days that finally gave us some time today was Cordero Patterson, who obviously was signed for many reasons for the Steelers, and I'll have more on him later on DKPittsburghSports.com. Obviously a dynamic kick returner, unbelievable with special teams, but also knows the Arthur Smith offense really well. So we heard from Cordero Patterson today, Jaylen Warren, Joey Porter Jr., Broderick Jones. There's stuff on DKPittsburghSports.com right now on them. Obviously, what happens during these practices, health notwithstanding, can only go so far, unless somebody unfortunately would go down, which nothing's happened on the injury front, thankfully. But,
Sorry, I'm just saying I would
go ahead.
probably say more happens in the classroom than actually happens on the field. Not saying that what happens on the field is completely discredited or anything like that, but Cody says something here. Sorry, he says it's just to see who's in shape. That's actually kind of not what OTAs are for. OTAs are for installing the parts of the team, like especially obviously this offseason, installing the offense. It's a brand new offense, brand new coordinator, new coaches at multiple positions. Even one coach who was there last year is in a new spot. Mike Sullivan, no longer the quarterback's coach. He's now a senior offensive assistant. And so, that's really more of what OTAs and even mandatory minicamp are for, is for the laying the groundwork. I wouldn't even say laying the foundation, almost laying the rebar for the foundation. That is, obviously poor to training camp. And that is really when, you got to be in shape, right? And Barber's right here. It's instructional time. That's what OTAs and mandatory minicamp are mainly for.
I think even Cam Heyward made mention of it. Like, he's still getting used to the new stretch routine because, the Steelers replaced their strength and conditioning coach. It's now Phil Matus, the pride of Greenville, Pennsylvania. Phil Matus is the new strength and conditioning coach. There's a new wide receivers coach. There's a new quarterbacks coach. There's a new offensive coordinator. Like, there's still a lot for this team to kind of get on the track, so to speak. Right. And I'll tell you one thing, you would know this by watching it, Chris, if you were there. It just looks different. What they're doing looks different. Different stretch routines. You can see that they stretch in the big groups all the time. Now it's split up. They split up by like offensive line and tight ends, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, and then the defense is on the other field stretching. Like, even down to that, it's different. The stuff that Zach Azzani does with his wide receivers, it just looks different than what Frisman Jackson did with his room. Eddie Faulkner, obviously, way more hands-on now with the running backs because he's no longer the assistant offensive coordinator. So Eddie Faulkner is more hands-on involved. Not that he wasn't before, but he's
always been pretty hands-on running backs coach. Yeah,
but he's now 100% devoted towards being on the running backs.
Right.
So there's getting used to those processes right now, and that's kind of what this is about. This is about that, like, bonding, so to speak. That's why they go to Kennywood in the middle of their OTA sessions. This is about, like, getting used to each other and learning about each other. And like you said, the more important work that's done this time of year is done in the classroom, is done in the film room, is done even in the weight room, down to the weight room. I remember last year during around this time, Calvin Austin was just getting back, and obviously 2 years ago missed his rookie season with an injury, was just getting back, was working out. And like, that's what this is kind of for. It's for the guys like, for example, a Corey Trice, who doesn't have a knee brace on anymore. It's for guys like that. It's for the rookies. It's for the newcomers. It's for exactly what the Steelers are going through right now in terms of also installing their new offense.
Yeah, it is very, very much, not to kind of beat a dead horse here, but it really is just the very, very beginnings. It is the installation of everything that's going to be the 2024 Steelers. And that's why anything that you see on the field, it's, you probably take more out of individual drills than you do actual team drills. Now, once the guys line up in team drills, these guys are competitors. The competition takes over. And, when Darnell Washington catches multiple touchdowns and 7 shots, there's going to be some bragging that goes on. That's just those guys being competitive. But the true competition really does not begin until training camp, because that is when it's legitimate football activity. The dial is turned up a bit, right? I mean, to the point where some practices are fully padded, right? That doesn't happen during OTAs. That doesn't happen during mandatory minicamp. It doesn't happen every day at training camp either. The CBA doesn't allow that, but there are, a significant amount of practices during training camp that are padded, that are full contact. And, that's whenever, again, you begin to have the things dialed up. Backs on backers is one of my favorite things to watch at training camp when these guys, because it's not actual X's and O's, but you're really getting the physical, the physicality layers being added to the competition. And that's when it's fun.
I was going to say, that's the best thing to watch in training camp. Yes, backs on backers. 100%. It's the best thing to watch right now. And my favorite thing to watch right now is the 7 shots period. Now, we can't really divulge into what happens with 7 shots because that's one of the periods that's like technically media are not there, even though we're there. Like we're not there. So anything that happens like in 7 shots, would have to be confirmed by a player. For that fact of that matter, after whenever that media viewing window, that like video window ends. So we can watch, we can see, but a player has to say, for example, if this didn't happen, but just hypothetically, if Joey Porter Jr. picked off Russell Wilson in 7 shots, Joey Porter Jr., somebody would have to say, yeah, that pick Joey made, or yeah, I picked Russell Wilson on. Like, he would have to say that. So I can't just sit here and be like, yeah, here's play for play what happened. Not at least now. When it comes to training camp, all bets are off because it's open to the public. So with that being said, and with that in mind, Mike Tomlin oftentimes uses the phrase, and this more in particular in training camp, Steelers versus Steelers, when he talks about that, like, training camp fueling the competitiveness, fueling like that juice, so to speak. You get pads on, you start hitting, you start really turning up the dial with respect to that activity. You're not really seeing that right now, quite honestly. Right now, what you're seeing is like players getting back into shape. Not that they're out of shape, but like players getting back into football shape, players getting back into learning the systems and getting back into that groove, so to speak. And this is league wide. Let's talk about Cam Sutton. Now, of course, the Steelers signed Cam Sutton officially yesterday. We didn't have a chance really to talk about it. And Cam Sutton, made his appearance on the South Side yesterday. He was signed, mid-morning and was on the field by noon for the practice, of course. And look, obviously the situation that involves Cam Sutton, I would urge, if you want to learn more about it, to go read it somewhere else because it's not really something I want to talk about in length here. It's obviously the situation, but obviously the point of that is that he's still subject somewhat to potential discipline from the NFL. He entered a pretrial, I believe it's called a pretrial diversion program last month. So he'll have to do some counseling, he'll be on probation a little bit. So Cam Sutton's still working through some things, but the Steelers signed him to what is reportedly a 1-year veteran minimum deal. It's a low-risk signing for the Steelers in that regard. They're not dedicating a ton of money. They're not dedicating a ton of years to him. But there is the potential that he could be suspended to start the regular season.
I'd be shocked if he wasn't, to be completely honest.
I agree.
Now, for how many games? I know there's some speculation out there or even possible reports or anything, but either way, nothing's been actually handed down yet. So, but it wouldn't shock me if there was a suspension there. I mean, again, if you read the details of, what was on the affidavits and stuff like that, it was, pretty, it's not stuff that you just read and you kind of turn aside without, you
can't turn that to the side.
No, you can't. And so, that kind of stuff, whenever you read about it, it can, it paints a different picture for sure. And, it's interesting because, it's a difficult situation to talk about, number one, but obviously the Steelers are comfortable with it. It seems like the players are going to welcome him with open arms. So obviously the player, what we see of a player in the locker room is, I mean, even if they peel back, even if they peel back the curtain for us, like I've had some very, very, what I would describe as heart-to-heart talks with players in the locker room, but they're still at work, right? Like it doesn't matter how much of a personal conversation you have with somebody at work, you're still at work. It's still not the person that is behind closed doors in their own home. And you never know what that person is like behind that. But so that's why whenever, you hear the stuff about a certain person, you're kind of like, wow, I didn't foresee that happening, because in my experience talking with Cam Sutton, it was always very professional. He was always very well spoken. It was always very polite. I never remember a time in which he refused an interview. And so it was surprising to me when you hear, of the stuff that happened. And so, but when you hear the players, you see the players welcoming him back with open arms, obviously Minka, had some pretty bold comments about that yesterday. And then you even go through players' Instagrams. Like I saw Najee like reposted the Steelers, official signing of Sutton on his Instagram story. Like these guys are, and he had like a little like strong arm emoji, with Cam Sutton. And so it's just like these players are obviously accepting of it. The team is obviously comfortable with it. And if there's a team that knows Cam Sutton better than anybody, it's the Steelers. And so obviously they, whatever the course of action is here when it comes to Cam, when it comes to the Steelers, that they obviously have a plan in place, and regardless of what happens. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell people how to feel about it. I have my own personal feelings about it. I'm not going to share them here. It's not appropriate. And I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it. But it is what it is. The team signed him. On the field, it makes a lot of sense. They need a slot corner. He fits that role. I don't think anybody's going to debate the addition on the field, but obviously what happened off the field is going to turn some people, kind of against it. And I understand that process. So
the Steelers wouldn't have re-signed him if they didn't feel comfortable with whatever was in front of them.
Right.
And what has already happened. And what I mean by that is with respect to Cam Sutton's atonement, with respect to the legal proceedings, with respect to what potential punishment could be coming down in the future. The Steelers would not have signed him. They would not have asked him to put pen to paper if they didn't feel comfortable with what was about to happen, or if they weren't comfortable with where he was at currently. And Cam Sutton even said yesterday that he felt a little more light in the heart. He felt more lighthearted. Sometimes you just need to get into a new environment. Sometimes you just need to get back to an environment that he grew up in for 6 years, that treated him really well for 6 years, that let him grow as a person, that he grew up in. I believe he was drafted when he was, 21, 22 years old? So he spent most of his 20s here in Pittsburgh. He grew up here from 22 to, okay, I'm 31, you're in your mid-30s. Like, when you were 22, 23, 25 years old, you were still figuring things out, like we all were. We all are, if you're still that age. And if you're not that age yet, you're going to learn that you're going to be still figuring things out by the time you're 22 to 26. So Cam Sutton grew up here, essentially. He grew older here. He learned the way of adulthood in Pittsburgh. Now he's back in an environment where not only he excelled in, but also that he knows is comfortable. He's familiar with it. And look, players talk about it all the time. Heck, Cordell Patterson talked about it today, and I'll warn him later. Cordell Patterson talked about the Mike Tomlin effect, which every player that is from the outside that comes to play for Pittsburgh in some capacity, they all say it. I wanted to play for Mike Tomlin. I know the culture he has here. I know the culture the Steelers have. I know exactly what I'm getting with Mike Tomlin. That's a big part of this with Cam Sutton coming back. He couldn't sign in Carolina. No disrespect to the great people in Charlotte, but he couldn't sign there. He had to, if he was going to sign anywhere, this would have been the place for him to come back to. So it just makes total sense for Cam Sutton. And again, for the Steelers' sake, number one, they could use him on the field as a slot corner. They could certainly use him because he's still pretty good. He had a down year with Detroit last year, but
like mostly on the outside, though.
But 2 years ago with Pittsburgh in the slot, he was phenomenal. He had I believe it was 15 passes defended 2 years ago. That's unbelievable. And number two, again, if they weren't comfortable with him in the situation that he's in, they would never have even approached this in the first place. Or even if they approached Sutton and said, hey, where are you at with everything? What's going on? And then they weren't comfortable with it. And then after the second time they talked, they weren't comfortable with it. And the third time, etc. They would have backed out at any given time. So the Steelers kept the foot on the gas with him. And that's why he's here. So it makes sense from both standpoints. Now, if he's suspended 4 games, 6 games, 8 games, the Steelers will have to eat that. And he's here on a veteran minimum contract. So it's not like they're breaking the bank with him anyway. Lions signed him for 3 years, $33 million. That's a good chunk of change that the Lions basically you're eating up because of this.
Yeah.
Now,
No.
Sutton's going to make that money still, so this makes sense also from that standpoint.
From the Steelers' perspective, obviously, I'm not comparing Russell Wilson or Cam Sutton because the situations are completely different. Everything that had to do with Russell Wilson having to leave Denver was all football related. This was nothing to do with actual off the field personal or legal issues. Cam, obviously that is the situation, but the Steelers are on the field benefiting from this situation. Obviously, it's a terrible situation in which somebody was harmed, and and now that there are going to be consequences for it one way or the other. And but as far as the on-field stuff goes, yes, the Steelers are getting Cam Sutton, who was a very good defensive back for them, who like I said, fits a need right away, and they're getting it for the least amount of money they could possibly pay. And that's on the field. Again, it's a no-brainer. Off the field, it's the Steelers knew going in that if we sign him, there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be some PR fires to put out. It's just part of it. And I think women everywhere have the right to be upset about it because a woman was harmed in this situation, in that situation. And I understand if a woman doesn't want to support the signing. I get that. I understand it. And that's why I said I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it. But on the field, it makes a lot of sense. Because now you have Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson on the outside. You have Cam Sutton in the slot, not to mention Minka Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, and Devontae Casey at safety, and possibly even some rookies that can contribute eventually, and Ryan Watts or Beanie Bishop, Trenton Thompson, can't forget about him. I mean, the just one signing can make that defensive backs room a lot more deep than it was before. Mm-hmm. Because now you don't have to worry about, okay, who's going to fill that slot corner role? Is it going to be Beanie Bishop? Are they going to have to rely on a rookie to get that done? But yes, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not forgetting about Corey Trice or Darius Rush or any of the other guys who could possibly earn themselves roles. I'm just saying that one signing can make a big difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, shoot, man, the Patrick Queen signing made a huge difference at the inside linebacker room, and then drafting Peyton Wilson just put that way over the top. This particular signing, all of a sudden, cornerback is not really a need anymore. Now they've kind of got everything that they need there. Okay, this is what I'm going to try to avoid. Damon says you don't know that she was harmed. I'm just saying, based off of what I read in the affidavit, I was not there. I don't know. I'm really not wanting to get into this. We're not going to get into what happened there. I'm just saying I understand if some people have pushback against it. That's my point in what I'm trying to say. I understand if people have pushback, and people are going to be allowed to feel how they want to feel about it. All I'm saying.
From a football standpoint,
yes.
Let's say, for the sake of conversation, that Cam Sutton is suspended 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use that as an arbitrary number. 6 games, okay? 4 to 6, but let's say it's 6. By the time week 7, week 8 rolls around, they have a week 9 bye. So let's say that Cam Sutton's game ready post bye. Then, I mean, what's the old cliche, oh, that's a trade deadline acquisition, or that's you're getting a piece back for the stretch run, or whatever it is. Right now, we could sit here and say what we could say because of the situation and because of what has happened and what could happen in the future. But by the time the end of October rolls around, who knows what we're talking about with respect to Cam Sutton. So we just got to let things play out. He's certainly doing that. The Steelers will certainly allow for that to happen, and we will all see in time, however long it takes, whenever the NFL decides, exactly what happens. So let's just leave it at that. Cam Heyward returned. Chris, I know, talked about it the other day. Cam Heyward, of course, returned this week. I can't really say he's ending a holdout because there's really no holdout. He's just he didn't come to a voluntary portion of the offseason in which he didn't need to be there. So you can't really call it a holdout, but what you can say is Cam Heyward, in years past, never skipped OTAs up until now. So that's the newsworthiness part of it, but still no contract in hand. And he said even, showing up this week doesn't necessarily reflect the progress of those contract talks, and that him being here is more about him wanting to be a team leader and being here for the team, and I respect the hell out of Cam for that. But also, he says he's a top 5 player at his position. Now, you can have your opinion about that. I certainly do. And look, I'm just going to say this. I don't think the Steelers should spend more money than they already are on a 35-year-old defensive tackle who just came off of groin surgery and then had surgery on his other groin in the offseason. But that's just my opinion on that. He has 1 more year left, $22 million on the contract. He said he wants to play 3 more years. That was the number he gave. He wants to play 3 more years, and he feels like he can play 3 more years at a high level. So if he's going to do it as a Steeler, he's got to sign a 3-year, an extension for 2 years beyond this year. And he's obviously going to play hardball with respect to the money that he wants. He said he feels he's a top 5 defensive tackle and wants to get paid as such. And good on him for doing that. We'll see if the Steelers do it. That's all I can say about it. We'll see if they do it.
I think something will get worked out eventually. If not, then Cam really is, and rightfully so. Any player can do it, sticking to his guns and going to get paid accordingly, and or get paid as he deems he should. And so I do think at some point that the two sides are going to work it out. I don't know if that'll end up, working out in a certain way where they lower his cap hit for this season. Mark, his cap hit is $22 million. The salary and the cap hits are often very different, especially after a contract has been restructured, because you have the base salary, you have any other potential bonuses. The signing bonus is the big portion of it. But the cap hit overall is $22.4 million, I believe is what it is. It's north of 22. So that's the cap hit. That's what ultimately has the biggest impact on what the Steelers can and can't do in terms of any other additions they make to the roster. For example, if Omar Khan really is, holding out for the right trade for a receiver and needs the cap space to do it, Cam Heyward is eating up $22.4 million of cap space right now. And so if they were to sign into an extension, they could work out something in which his cap hit this season is lowered. Who knows if that actually ends up happening or not. Obviously, I think the Steelers would like to do that. They would like the additional breathing room. I think they would like to have a Cam Heyward on the roster possibly for the next 3 seasons, because yes, you would expect Father Time to continue to wear the body down. That just happens. I illustrated it a couple days ago that when you're in your mid-30s, you don't have to be a professional athlete to feel the aging process. You get out of bed sometimes and you're sore for doing absolutely nothing. It's just part of the aging process. And this is a guy who has been playing professional football for well more than a decade and playing in the trenches. So his body, obviously is going to have wear and tear. Now he takes way better care of his body than I take care of mine. But, there's still the potential to have value there on the field as well. He can still maintain strength. He can still maintain proper positioning, eating up space, possibly even. I just kind of wonder how does that work out? How do the Steelers value that in terms of a contract? And does that possibly align with what Cam feels he's due? I think that's Captain Obvious here, but that's really the biggest question. How far apart are they?
Now, just looking at defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman contracts across the NFL, nobody Cam's age is getting paid more than Cam. Okay. He's 35 years old. His average annual value is about $16.4 million. on his current
That's what it was
contract.
for the contract, yeah.
Yeah. Nobody his age is making that much money. So, quite frankly, he's getting paid a little bit more, I think, than what the market would suggest. The only player that is above 31 years old that is getting paid that much is, I'm going to botch the name, David Onyemata of the Falcons, who's getting paid $11.7 million a year, average annual. He's 32 years old. Anybody older than that, DeQuan Jones of the Bills, is making $8 million at age 33. You have to, and this is taking Aaron Donald out of the equation because he retired. Everybody else above Cam Heyward is 31 years old or younger that is getting paid more than Cam. So these teams that are investing all of this money into defensive tackles are investing also into that age. Again, I stress this. Do the Steelers really want to commit more money and more years to somebody who's 35 years old and is coming off of surgery on both of his groins and who admitted himself on his own podcast that he was playing on one leg last year?
Yeah.
That's just business. That is just business. I get it. He is a pillar in the community. He wants to be a one-helmet guy. He wants to be a Steeler for the rest of his career. He wants to play 3 years after this, or 2 more years, I guess, after this. I just don't see the logic that the Steelers would have in extending Cam Heyward for more money than what he's making. Looking at some of the contracts across the league, Chris Jones is the highest paid defensive tackle in the league, $31.75 million. No way in hell Cam Heyward gets that money. Christian Wilkins at $27.5 million. No way. Justin Madubuike, who's 27, is at $24.5 million. Derek Brown, who's 26 years old of the Panthers, $24 million. Quentin Williams at 27 years old, $24 million. So I get it. If Cam wants to get a little bit more money, that's fine. He can always ask. I just don't see that kind of money going to Cam Heyward right now. It doesn't make sense. You have to pay for the player that you think he's going to be, not the player that he was. That's just what you have to do. That's smart business. You can't pay Cam Heyward on merit right now. The Steelers are not in a position where they can do that.
And Jay Moods brings up a point. It says, I think we're punishing him for playing hurt last year. The part of that you have to weigh as a team when you're trying to decide how much money to give a certain player is you have to understand the context of the injury. Yes, like he played injured last year and his production was obviously lesser because of it. That's okay. So you would assume that if Cam Heyward's healthy, that he could still be productive. Okay, well, that's good. But the problem is that typically the older you get, the harder it is to stay healthy. Right. I mean, I talked about the aging process. That's just, your body does not recover the same way with anything when you're 35 as compared to when you're 25. It's just science. Like, yep. I don't have to. I mean, go get absolutely hammered when you're 25, and then go get hammered when you're 35, and then tell me that you react the same way when you're 35 as you did when you were 25. You just don't. You know, and that's just one thing. It's the same way with anything. And you know, teams have to account for that. It's like, okay, he just had his first real injury-riddled season. Where he missed games, and the games that he did play, he was way less than 100%. What are we going to do if we sign him to a big contract and this continues to be a problem for the next 3 years? Because at his age, it could be a problem. He
becomes Albert Pujols. He becomes Albert Pujols on the Angels, which you don't want, which kills a franchise.
And
well,
I'm
not going to kill the Steelers, but you know what I mean.
I'm not saying that the Steelers should not give Cam Heyward a new contract. I'm not saying that they shouldn't even give him a 2-year extension pass, because I guess if there's any player that can prove people wrong, it's most likely going to be Cam Heyward, right? And I think that there is a way to pay him appropriately for the player that you can project him to be, and also kind of honoring what he's done for you, because that does play a role into it, whether you like it or not. That does play a role into it. They're not just going to sign him to a new contract and completely forget about what he's done for this team, what he's done for this community. That is going to play a role into it. Then on Cam's side, he also has to understand, in my opinion, I'm not going to sit here and tell Cam how to do his business, because it's not my role. But I also think Cam needs to understand the same situation, that the Steelers are in a situation in which there's only certain number of players that they can really that the Steelers can give a big, gigantic contract to. TJ Watt's already being paid a lot of money. Minka Fitzpatrick has a big contract. There are going to be other contracts that are going to have to be paid out. Most likely, quarterback is going to be paid out next season. If Justin Fields or Russell Wilson work out, either way, it's going to cost the Steelers a lot of money because quarterbacks don't come cheap. And so Cam Heyward has to also understand that aspect of it and possibly give some sort of discount, whether it be what you want to call it, a hometown discount, a team discount, whatever it is. There have been plenty of great players that have done that over the course of their careers. Ben Roethlisberger did it. Shoot, Tom Brady did it. Like, Tom Brady constantly did that throughout his career. He took less money so that he still got paid, but he took less money so that the team around him could be better. And look what it got him. It helped. I mean, he won 7 rings, right? So I think that, like I said, I think there's a way in which both the team and the player can be honest with themselves about certain things and also kind of give a little to the other side so that both can walk away winners from this.
Here's what I'll say to kind of wrap things up with today's show. Like, I understand what you're saying on that with respect to who Cam Heyward is. I fully understand that the Steelers can't just say, go kick rocks, go play somewhere else. They can't do that to Cam Heyward. I understand that. Yeah. And it's also kind of on Cam Heyward's end to say, screw you guys, I'm going to wherever. I'm going to Carolina. Poor Carolina. I'm just shredding Carolina today. Cam Heyward can't just go, screw you guys, I'm going to Carolina, because he has a bunch of stake in this area per se. So neither side can just poof away from each other. There has to be some kind of healthy resolution to this. And I'm sure the Steelers want that. And I think Cam Heyward wants that as well. So if everybody's smart here, which I trust everybody is smart here, I think what's going to happen eventually is Cam Heyward finds a way to get that extension, but I think it has to be more team-friendly than he would like it to be. I think Cam Heyward's price tag has to come down, in his mind, just a little bit in order for the Steelers to make that work. And look, the Steelers have to stand firm. The Steelers have to stand firm on this. They can't give in to say, well, you know what, Cam, you're right. You're a pillar in our community. We love what you've done here. You've been a fixture for us for 15 years, whatever it is now. Like, I understand all of that, but the Steelers can't give in to that. That's just not good business. And like you said, they got to pay Minka. They got to pay TJ. They got to pay Highsmith. They got to pay a quarterback at some point. They can't get away with not paying a quarterback forever just because Ben Roethlisberger is not here anymore. They have to pay a quarterback, and good quarterbacks are expensive. So
it could be as early as next season. Like I said, if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields work out, I mean that really could be an expensive contract right away.
Yeah,
and I'm just gonna say this now. I don't remember the exact details of how it went down. I obviously was not covering the team at the time, and if my timeline is correct, it was right after my wife got back from deployment. And so my wife and I pretty much completely unplugged ourselves from everything in the world to make up for being away from each other for 9 months. When Troy Polamalu and his time was done, I mean, it was done. Like it wasn't like, I mean, the Steelers weren't willing to go there to keep giving him more and more money. Like they could see the writing on the wall. They could see the performance on the field. Like DK hit a little bit on it yesterday, and he obviously remembers that situation way more than I do. But they knew whenever it was over with Troy. And I mean, obviously you saw the fallout from that. I mean, now things have been patched up since then. But for a while, the team and Troy weren't really talking much to each other. And so I think Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin want to avoid a situation like that happening with Cam, because Cam is such a beloved person and beloved player.
He'll be in their Hall of Honor someday.
100%. I mean, he's going to make a case for the actual Hall of Fame.
I agree.
I don't know if he actually makes it, but he has at least made a case for himself.
Mm-hmm.
So no, like absolutely is going to be considered one of the best Steelers, at least of the 21st century. But I would even say one of the best Steelers of all time. One of the best. I wouldn't quite put him up there. Obviously, you've got like when it comes to defensive lineman, Mean Joe Green is the absolute best, and you get L.C. Greenwood. You got a couple of other names that you would throw in front of there. But Cam Heyward is absolutely going to be up there in terms of one of the all-time great Steelers. And you don't just automatically just write that off. But again, if they can kind of do that with Troy Polamalu, who is, you want to talk about legendary Steelers, he is as legendary as it gets and one of the greatest safeties to ever play the game. I don't think you can necessarily say that about Cam Heyward, that he's one of the greatest defensive linemen to ever play. I could probably name at least 10 that are better. But I'm just trying to say it's not quite the same situation. And I don't know if but I also think the Steelers don't necessarily want to go into another situation in which they had that ending the same way they had with Troy. Now, again, it all worked out. Troy's back and they were against this year, and it was really cool to see. All the highlights were awesome. But we'll see what happens. I ultimately think the team and Cam work something out. I don't know what that looks like. I wish I could tell you, but I think something works out eventually. I just don't know how that looks yet.
I'm with you on that, but here's the flip side in relation to Troy. The Steelers aren't going to let one player become larger than the Steelers are. They're not going to do that. They understand who they are, this franchise, this organization. They understand what power they have. They're not going to let anybody go over them. They're not going to let anybody put themselves on a pedestal over the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're not going to do it. Not Troy, not Cam, not Ben, nobody. Nobody is bigger than the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's
Ben
just
wanted to
reality.
Play another year. Yeah, Ben wanted to play another year. He just, and really he had, he talked about it. He had an opportunity to play elsewhere. He just couldn't see himself playing in another uniform, so he didn't. But he felt like he could have played another year.
That's my point.
Now, whether he could have or not, that's a but I think the Steelers felt like that he was done, like before even he played his last season. And Ben was very, very much like Cam, thought that he could play some more, but he didn't.
Yep.
Really quick, just to clarify this, Mark says not even close to Joe Green, pal. Dude, Mean Joe Green is the greatest Steeler of all time. The Steelers don't happen without Mean Joe Green. So I'm very aware of his place in history. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah, they let Franco go to the Seahawks, as Mark says. I mean, look, again, nobody's bigger than that franchise. It's not how it's run. It's not how it's run. All right. Good show today. Good stuff. This week was a little wonky just with timing and everything. I can anticipate next week might be the same or similar as well. We'll see when that schedule comes out. But nonetheless, there will be a show tomorrow on Friday on June 7th at 3 p.m. back in a regular time slot here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Remember, you can find us where all podcasts are found. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Those go a lot further than you think. Why is that? Because if you like, if you share, if you subscribe, that puts our show, our channel at the top of everybody's algorithm. So people who are not subscribed to DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube and on the podcast platforms, get those in those recommended little boxes that you see at the top or like in the middle of your pages. That's what that's for. So somebody that's not a fan of the show or doesn't listen to this show daily can join us, and we can grow this thing, and we can become bigger, and we can bring in some sponsors, maybe get some merch made, maybe, let Chris's move to Pittsburgh be a little bit easier. How about that? Do it for Chris if you're going to do it for anybody. Game 1 tonight. Who you got? Mavericks tonight. Mavericks in 7. There's my answer. Mavs tonight. Mavs in 7. Down with Boston. Chris, I think I know who you got.
Mavs. I say Mavs in 7 too.
I wonder. Mavs in 7.
I like the way the Mavs can. I like them the way the Mavs can defend the paint, but Boston's such a good 3-point shooting team. I don't know if Dallas can defend the perimeter as well as they can defend the paint, but we'll see. I still think Mavs.
His attendance.
I have to go with the best player. This is NBA is a star-driven league, and the Mavericks have the best player in the league, in my opinion. So
Best player in the league. Debatable, but I get what you're saying.
Luka's, I mean, okay, bare minimum, Luka's top 3. Bare minimum.
I'm with you. Top 3,
Right.
top 5 in that ballpark.
And in this particular series, he's the best player on the court.
Can you imagine if Dan Hurley goes to the Lakers, by the way? Holy smokes, if that happens. Man, that'd be wild. All right, we're out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Go Mavs, I think we're all saying. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.